despair, and you give yourself to the shadows. Believe, truly believe in the Emperor of mankind, and you shall walk in his light, no matter how dark the path you tread.
The Imperium of Man relies upon the faith of its subjects to galvanize its purpose. Every labor, conflict, and sacrifice made in the name of its divine sovereign. Yet for many a heretic, their eyes have been blinded to the master of mankind's majesty, their idolatry of false gods enslaving them to the will of malevolent beings who wish only for the corruption of all living things. For today, we shall elucidate a champion of the faith of the Imperium, a martyr who confronts the terrors of the void without reservation, knowing in her heart that the Emperor protects. The living saint of the Adepta Sororitas, Celestine. To be a witness to the grim darkness of the far future is to behold untold nightmares and miracles in equal measure. The bleakest of circumstance cut through by champions of blinding light within even the most suffocating despair. Yet among all such seneschals of the Master of Mankind, none have accrued a legend alike to that of Saint Celestine, a gleaming seraph said to appear during the Imperium's most perilous times of need, often martyred in the climactic final battle to defeat the foes of humanity. Little known of the true origins of this beacon of hope beyond speculation and tales of unverified fables. What is known of Celestine is that before her ascension to the status of a living saint, she served as a Sister Repentia of the Order of Our Martyred Lady. A veteran of countless wars who nonetheless fell short of her duty to preserve the Imperium. During the war against the Palatine Schism, this crestfallen warrior fought at the forefront of battle to retake the planet of Eurytion. Slain in battle alongside every one of her sisters of battle, having felled over 100 men in the assault, those who survived prepared her body for its eternal rest, yet saw signs of life nonetheless lingering within her ravaged form. Seeing the divine light of the Master of Mankind glow within her body, the scions of the Order of Our Martyred Lady cleansed her body of the stain of battle, finding no scars nor wounds upon her flesh. Reinstating Celestine at the spear tip of all Imperial forces during the next day's battle, hordes of heretics were culled within mere hours of combat, as Celestine's visage was proclaimed the righteous symbol of the Imperium's victory against the schismatics. Lord Militant Ansgar ordering the final assault to be made upon the capital of the Palatine sector. Celestine, now reputed as the figurehead of the campaign, insisted instead on the Crusades' forces' deployment to the backwater planet of Sanctus Lys. The faith of long-dead heroes of the Imperium, beckoning Celestine to venture to the shrine of St. Catherine. Within the holy resting place of the martyr of our Order of the Fiery Heart, Celestine's forces unearthed a hidden crypt beneath a broken altar. Descending alone into the darkness, untrodden for millennia, Celestine returned to the surface at first light, ascending clad in a panoply of radiant gold, wielding a blade wreathed in holy flame. Having achieved apotheosis as a living saint of the Imperium, Lord Militant Ansgar organized a conclave of the Thorian ecclesiarchy, hailing Celestine as the hieromartyr of the Palatine Crusade. Cherished for her vanquishing of untold heretics as she departed to lead myriad wars of faith across the stars, the spirits of millions were lifted to new heights of fervent zeal as her example drove her allies to take up arms in the name of the God Emperor like never before. The Adepta Sororitas, renewed of purpose with such a champion of their orders, swelling their hearts with pride, such a time of unprecedented veneration would alas be sundered. Slain by the hands of the War Master, Thorax, as the renegade forces triggered an atomic meltdown of his domains, with word of Celestine's death wrought by kilometers of annihilation, Terra's Tower of Heroes chimed once to herald the loss of the living saint. Billions relenting in their toil for a moment to contemplate the death of such an esteemed heroine. Within the convent prioress, Sisters of Battle mourned in peaceful contentment, knowing their champion now stood by the right hand of the Emperor. Yet whilst many believed the Angel of Our Martyred Lady to be at rest, nothing could be farther from the truth. Her blade argent felling countless foes upon numerous fronts across the vastness of the Imperium. Aiding the Order of the Ebon Chalice, Space Wolves, and Salamander's chapters during the Promethean War of 980.M41, upon the cardinal world of Helatine, the Black Legion forces of the Demon Prince, Lord Gralastix, fell in droves. The bolters of brothers and sisters, unleashing devastation upon possessed heretic Astartes, Celestine carved a sway through their vanguard, driving her blade deep into the heart of Lord Gralistix before vanishing from the fray. For to be an immortal angel is to inherit a curse most foul, for no being can sustain life eternal without paying a heavy cost on their immortal soul. Slain in combat upon an unknown world, fighting a doomed campaign, Celestine would find herself inside the warp, bereft of steel atop a mound of her own corpses. Investigating her bleak surroundings, Celestine would save an entity known as Pilgrim from demonic aggression, unable to remember the Emperor's glory as she journeyed with her new companion across the Umbral Plains. Finding upon the armor of St. Catherine, anointed with the blood of its martyred namesake, and ardent blade, clad and clutched by long-dead fallen heroines. As Celestine recovered her armaments, the Pilgrim revealed her true identity as Faith. Confused by such strange circumstance, Celestine regardless followed Faith to a mountaintop crowned by a throne, the silhouette of a robed hag atop, a fell omen for even a saint to behold. Bound by the wizened elder, who proclaimed Celestine unworthy of the Emperor's patronage, the being tore her wings of faith from her back, denying her the gift of flight. Presenting a hostage to the wounded saint, a little girl no older than 8 Terran cycles, with a knife held to the innocent's throat, the hag known as Purpose demanded Celestine climb the mountain which loomed above. Promising to kill the aged crone should she harm the child, Celestine regardless pulled herself up to the mountain top, finding Faith and Purpose upon its summit alongside a fell executioner. A cornate demon holding Purpose at its mercy, beseeching Celestine to allow it to kill the crone for her prior transgression. The living saint denied the demon's enticements, recognizing the hag's true identity as Duty. Slaying the cornate demon, rescuing Faith and Duty from their bondage, Celestine marveled at the blades held in their hands, which seemed to melt into pure light before their essence combined with the argent blade. Seeking out the missing child, guided by a strange warmth upon her cheek, the comforting heat guided Celestine to a large tunnel dug by an unknown Goliath, its interior encrusted by bile and filth. As the trio encroached into the heart of its fetid innards, thousands of souls writhed trapped within its innermost bowels, tormented by the demon of Nurgle, the Devourer. Faith and Duty beginning to show signs of corruption as the influence of the grandfather weakened their resolve, Celestine nonetheless resisted such ailments, her faith restoring her wings as they sprouted from her back as the light of the Emperor freed the trapped souls. Setting upon Devourer as their hands tore gouges from its decrepit flesh, Celestine decapitated the Worm of Doubt, the trio fleeing from the tunnel as it collapsed before flying into the light of the Emperor which shone in the skies above. Separated from her companions, Celestine flew to a realm of idyllic peace, finding upon the missing girl, who revealed herself to be known as Hope. Decrying Celestine for never spending time with her as a result of Duty's needs. As tears flowed from her eyes, the living saint comforted the girl, promising to one day walk with her again in such lands of contentment, never again to be separated once the wars of the Emperor had concluded. Gathering hope, faith, and purpose, the trio's essence merged into Celestine's heart, the lessons learned from such virtues restoring her to life as she returned to the land of the living to combat the thralls of the Blood God. Descending upon an unknown world, saving the Cadian and Astrosian regiments fighting upon its soil. Upon establishing contact with the Order of the Ebon Chalice, Celestine began to combat the forces of chaos, led by the entity known as the War Engine. Convincing the commanders of the campaign to confront the corrupted Dark Age of Technology relic, despite accusations that Celestine could in truth be a demon in disguise sent to lead their efforts astray, the Imperials regardless rallied. Purging the Chaos cultists which barred their path, each death made by the Imperials fueled blood rituals to summon further reinforcements. The hordes of Juggernauts, Bloodletters, and Bloodthirsters in their wake, regardless unable to blunt the advance of the living saint. Reaching the enemy fortress as they began to enact the final push to end the campaign, the fallen Inquisitor of the Ordo Hereticus, Joffrey, commanded the soldiery to seize Celestine, declaring her a witch, unfit to enact the Emperor's will. 1/3 of such soldiers believing the lies of the corrupted Inquisitor, Celestine ignored such aggressors as she struck down the War Engine, turning her attentions to the Heretic Inquisitor as the full force of a plasma gun struck her. Striking down the Inquisitor as her wounds spilled her lifeblood, with the influence of the War Engine ebbing, the forces of chaos fell into disarray, allowing the Imperial defenders to reclaim the planet. Succumbing to her wounds, Celestine projected the light of the Emperor from her body, alike to a beacon, shepherding naval ships within system to navigate to the tumult of space to reinforce the defenders. Awakening once more atop the pile of her long-dead corpses, Celestine began her trials of rediscovery once more, her faith tested with each martyrdom made in the defense of the Imperium. Revived once more to confront the greatest threats against the Imperium's domains, whilst many deeds of the living saint would be made upon worlds of little providence within the fringes of galactic space, one amongst all would be regarded as legend with the close of the 41st millennium. Abaddon the Despoiler, War Master of Chaos Undivided and champion of the ruinous powers, commit his masterstroke to bisect the galaxy in twain. His sight set upon the fortress world of Cadia, which had stood for millennia as a bastion of Imperial might. Ablaze with holy flame, Celestine flew atop the outpost of Casa Craft, supported by 5 companies of Battle Sisters of the Order of our Martyred Lady, their number rescued from the warp, trapped for 1,400 years within its tides. Their vow to defend Cadia would act as penance for their absence from the galactic stage. Fending off the assaults of the Chosen of Abaddon, Urkraphos, resurrecting Canoness Genevieve and Eleanor, prior slain by the Demon Prince, to serve within her honor guard. For a time, the Imperials, now bolstered by the Sisters of Battle, turned the tide of war. The Gemini Superior, proving capable companions to aid in Celestine's attacks. Upon casting the body of Urkraphos from the walls of Casa Craft, the morale of the Thralls of Chaos began to wane. Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Cawl, arriving in orbit, seeking the peculiar Xenos pylons beneath Cadia's surface, Lord Castellan Ursicor Creed reinforced the Elysian fields to buy time for the Dex Avance ministrations. Acting as a last line of defense, wherein should the pylons be destroyed, all hope would be lost. Unbeknownst to the Lord Castellan, Belisarius would receive aid from an unlikely interloper, Trazyn the Infinite. Unified in purpose that the forces of chaos could not be allowed to destroy the pylons, as millions perished upon the surface of Cadia, such carnage acted merely as a prelude for the true slaughter to come. Abaddon the Despoiler taking to the field personally to destroy the Necron pylons, Lord Castellan Creed and Celestine redeployed to the underground catacombs to defend Belisarius and his unlikely ally. Trazyn releasing captive warriors from the Tesseract labyrinths of his collection of antiquities, as ancient ultramarines, guard regiments, and other oddities joined the fray. A long-imprisoned Puritan, Inquisitor Katarina Greyfax, would likewise face the forces of chaos. Archmagos Dominus Cawl, activating the pylons, diminishing the Eye of Terror, separating the warp from Cadia's skies, and banishing the demons of chaos from the planet's surface. In the moment of the Imperials' victory, their efforts would be snatched by the Despoiler's hands. Celestine likewise affected, with the Necron technology's warp diminishing power. As Abaddon the Despoiler attempted to slay Belisarius, the weakened saint hurled herself into the path of the arch-enemy. Easily overpowered by the Despoiler, as the Argent Blade crashed with Draknien. As the killing blow descended upon Celestine, the psychic might of Inquisitor Greyfax repelled Abaddon, buying time for the pylons to weaken his demonic forces remaining. The Cadian 8th Regiment, giving their lives dearly to slow the advance of Abaddon's Terminator charge. Lord Castellan Creed lost his own arm during the skirmish, as Celestine drove her Argent Blade through the spine of the distracted Despoiler. Informing Ezekal Abaddon that the Emperor protects, the Despoiler ripped himself free of her sword, reeling from a wound of such devastation not inflicted since his duel with High Marshal Sigismund of the Black Templars. Ordering his men to withdraw from the battle, victory seemed to be assured for the Imperials. Yet as the pylons continued to diminish the Eye of Terror, the skies darkened as a gigantic vessel loomed large. Forcing his fleet to ram the disabled Blackstone fortress Will of Eternity into a collision course with Cadia, the kinetic impact of such an enormous voidcraft ensured the destruction of the planet by an act of brute force. Lord Castellan Creed, Belisarius Cawl, Katarina Greyfax, and Celestine seeking out survivors of the dying world to evacuate. With aid from Marshal Marius Amalric and his Black Templars remaining on the surface, the so-called Celestinians attempted to salvage what they could of the doomed campaign. Belisarius Cawl, hailing the Arch Mechanicus Voidcraft, Iron Revenant, to rescue survivors of the campaign from the surface. Over 3 million survivors of Cadia's fall were now the responsibility of the Celestinians. Warp routes around Cadia, unusable due to the instability caused by the Necron pylons and resurgence of Chaos forces, the Imperial fleet was forced to flee from the Cadia system using sublight speed. Chased relentlessly by Black Legion vessels, the Iron Revenant ventured to the ice moon of Clasus in orbit of the world of Casa Holm, sacrificing itself with all hands to buy time after ferrying the Cadian survivors to its surface. Unwilling to let the sacrifice of the Iron Revenant be made in vain, the Celestinian Crusade, as it would be known, held faith with the Living Saint's visions of salvation, following her through the seemingly barren, frigid wasteland. Rescued from the pursuit of chaos thanks to the arrival of the Ynnari, known as the Reborn in their Xenos dialect, their leader, Yvraine, the Daughter of Shades, opened a hidden webway gate, allowing the Celestinian safe passage to the realm of Ultramar. The domains of the Ultramarines, likewise beset by the Black Legion, now emboldened by their victory at Cadia. Upon finding the misfit band of Zealots, Puritans, and Xenos, the Celestinians were taken to the capital of Ultramar, Macragge. Met by Chapter Master Marneus Calgar within the fortress of Hera, this holy resting place of their dormant Primarch, Roboute Guilliman, was too valuable to leave unguarded, the Ultramarines preparing for a concerted assault of His Majesty by the Black Legion. Belisarius called declaring his intent to awaken the son of the Emperor after millennia of stasis. The Archmagos Dominus had dragged auto-reliquaries all the way from Cadia, intended to heal Roboute Guilliman of his mortal wounds. Having spoken to Yvraine of his endeavor during their travels to Ultramar, Belisarius, with aid from the Eldar Prophet's strange arcana, would return the Blade of Unity to the Imperium during its hour of greatest need. Wary of such tall tales, Marneus Calgar listened to the counsel of his senior officers, First Captain Severus Agamon advising caution, whilst Chief Librarian Varro Tigurius spoke of visions of events to come. The sanction of the Black Templars veteran Amalric, Puritan Inquisitor Greyfax, and a living embodiment of the Emperor's divine will in Celestine, nonetheless leaving Calgar divided in his actions. Such a decision would be denied from him, as the Black Legion assaulted the fortress of Hera. Fighting to preserve the resting place of their holy Primarch from the despoilment of traitors, while Calgar, Agamon, Tigurius, the Vizarch, Amalric, Greyfax, and Celestine fought valiantly, Belisarius and Yvraine tended to their efforts to awaken Guilliman. Successful in their endeavor, the avenging son of the Emperor awakened to find betrayers in his midst, unleashing his wrath upon the traitors to the throne, as Celestine beheld a living embodiment of her faith realized. Mankind's toil to preserve the Imperium had been vindicated with the return of the son of the Master of Mankind, and as the Celestinians, Ultramarines, and defenders of Ultramar purged the unclean from Macragge, a new dawn would arise from the ashes of Cadia. The relationship between Celestine and Inquisitor Greyfax improving, now having seen a modern miracle unfold before their own eyes, the Living Saint stood vindicated as a true instrument of the Emperor's will made manifest. Pledging her service to aid in Roboute Guilliman's Terran Crusade, intended to seek guidance from the Master of Mankind himself. As the Crusade fleet ventured into the depths of the Maelstrom, the true extent of the Great Rift spread across the stars would be unearthed. Fending off emboldened raiders and traitor warships as swarms of plagueflies beset their voidcraft, only with the aid of a shockwave of light from Saint Celestine were such gnawing insects banished. Fighting their way to the throne world, following combat made against the pawn of the Blackheart and demonic incursions. As the Terran Crusade entered the Sol system, a new threat would attempt to prevent Guilliman's meeting with the Emperor. The moon of Luna, invaded by the Thousand Suns Legion, led by their demonic Primarch, Magnus the Red. Roboute Guilliman did battle with his fallen brother, ending the attempts by Tzeentch to end their campaign. Roboute entering the throne room of his father, as Celestine tended to the desperate plight of the pilgrims of the Imperial Palace. As the Living Saint spread hope for the resurgence of the Emperor's light, after 2 days of council, Guilliman returned. Installed as the Lord Commander of the Imperium, henceforth, the Avenging Sun began preparations to reclaim the sundered glories of humanity. His Indomitas Crusade, destined to be the greatest resurgence of mankind's strength, seen in millennia. Swearing an oath to stand with Guilliman, as he unleashed his great counter-offensive against the ruinous powers. Though Celestine's aid given to the Indomitas Crusade would be invaluable, battles of faith regardless beckoned across the stars. Aiding the plight of the world of Sardreka, deprived of the Emperor's Astronomicon as a result of the Noctis Aeterna, the planet now relied on a Psyker known as the Beacon, who had been blinded upon seeing the light of the Emperor. Now acting as an astropathic light to allow Imperial vessels a means to traverse the perils of warp travel. World Eater's forces, led by their Chaos Lord, Kordas the Slaughterer, beset the Imperial Fist defenses of Captain Petrov Daisorian. The Alpha Legion renegade warband, the Unsung, infiltrating the Chaos lines to secure the beacon for themselves. Celestine surveyed their intent during her defense of the conflict, seeing within them a nature aligned with the will of the Emperor. Confronting the former equerry of the Red Angel, Khan the Betrayer, as he pursued Captain Kassar and his harrow, Celestine sacrificed her life during the defense within the planet's Adeptus Arbites facility, allowing the Unsung to secure the beacon, denying its light from the clutches of the Blood God servants. Her skull claimed for the Blood God by the hands of his most cherished champion. Regardless, death is merely a means to postpone the Living Saint's judgment. As though the world of Sardreka would fall, other, more pressing Chaos plots would require Celestine's attentions. Reborn once again to bring the Emperor's light to the Imperium, Celestine would be reunited with her comrade-in-arms, Katarina Greyfax, during the defense of the Basilica of St. Catherine. Perceiving a vision sent from the Emperor warning of an impending threat to the Imperium itself, as Greyfax purged the heretics of Arcanos Hive, reports that cultists sought to reach the throne world would require investigation. Greyfax meeting with Inquisitor Lord Trevain, bringing word that the High Lord of Terror and Ecclesiarch Decius the 22nd sought to abolish the decree passive. In the eyes of the highest-ranking member of the Imperial Church, the growing threat of chaos required greater armies to be mustered. Allowing for the raising of men-at-arms pledged to serve the Ecclesiarchy, in addition to the sanctioned warriors of the Sisters of Battle, though Lord Trevain had dispatched an agent of the Officio Assassinorum to end Decius's life, Greyfax would demand he withdraw such a command. Venturing to the throne world during the Feast of the Emperor Ascendant, Katarina's use of psychic powers led her to identify an assassin within the crowd, not of the Imperium's Officio. A zealot Alpha-class Psyker giving praise to the so-called Eight-Turned God, as Celestine spirited Decius away using her angelic wings. The Chapel of St. Four would be destroyed, killing all pilgrims present. The Custodian Guard, with aid from the Sisters of Silence, purging the assassin, a companion of the Emperor present during the founding of the Adeptus Aurorita, Longinus would reveal himself. Having remained vigilant, watching for signs of events which may repeat the folly of the Reign of Blood, the heresies of Goj Vandire could not be allowed to be repeated, and thus Longinus joined Celestine and Greyfax in their investigation. Venturing to Ophelia 7, site of the Synod Ministra and holy bastion of the Adeptus Auroritas, as the forces of ruin attempted to divert their voidcraft, Celestine would harness the light of the Astronomicon, bringing order to the astropaths aboard and banishing the thralls of chaos. High Ecclesiarch Decius, wary of Rabute Guilliman's rise to power as a man lacking faith in the Emperor's divine majesty, regardless of his debates with Longinus and Greyfax, the merit of redacting the decree passive remained unresolved. Holding the scepter of Sebastian IV as he presided over a gathering upon Ophelia 7, Ecclesiarch Decius pronounced the abolishment of the ruling to preclude the Church of the Imperium from drafting men-at-arms to stand in its defense. Celestine once more seeing visions of the Tyrant of the Blue Flame guiding her to the world which sired her order of warriors. As the protectors of Decius ventured to the world of San Lior, they would receive hails from a chapter of the Astartes. The Black Templars, 300 strong in number, had diverted from their Aurilla crusade. The commander, Marshal Armand Montfort, known by his men as God's Helm, demanding Decius reinstate the decree passive on pain of death. Marshal Montfort, though respectful of the companion of the Emperor in their midst and living saint of his will, regardless showed initial hostility towards Greyfax. His unease at her psychic mutations, allayed by her proven valor fighting Abaddon the Despoiler upon Cadia. Tensions rising of a great holy war, which would bring further division across swathes of the Imperium. As the Black Templars' fleet pledged their might to Celestine's journey, their scanning technologies would locate Alpha Legion signatures within orbit of San Lior. Deploying to the world, long surrounded by warp storms, Saint Celestine would reunite with her stalwart ally of yore, Canoness Sabrina, who had stood vigil upon the time-dilated world for over a century to outside observers. The sisters stationed upon the world, surviving thanks to their faith being harnessed through the holy relics known as the Bells of Absolution. Each chime had created null space anomalies which banished the forces of chaos, yet must be told sparingly to allow its effect to magnify. Finding evidence of the Changer of Ways to be responsible for the growing mayhem within Imperium Sanctus. With aid from Greyfax, Celestine uncovered the plot of Tzeentch to use the faith of the Emperor as a weapon to corrupt its followers from within. Realizing Ecclesiarch Decius to be an unwitting pawn of the Changer of Ways, Celestine and her allies ventured to Ophelia 4, confronting the greater demon known as the Tyrant of the Blue Flame. The champion of Tzeentch possessing Celestine's body as its plot failed to ruin, Custodian Longinus by necessity struck a mortal blow upon her body, banishing the entity at the cost of slaying the living saint. Relieved of guilt for his actions, as Celestine once more restored to life by the will of the Emperor, even for the secular companion, his faith was shaken to see such a miracle with his own eyes, finding no trace of the wound inflicted by his hand. The chaos incursion of the Blue Flame ended with the confrontation of the greater demon over. Celestine and her allies finally ventured to Ophelia 7, ending the life of High Lord Decius for his actions made in the name of the Lord of Change. For there is no forgiveness for false prophets and betrayers of the Emperor's divine will, and for Saint Celestine, her duty to the Master of Mankind shall not end until he deems her service complete.
Lend me your wrath, lend me your hate, lend me your fire. Praise him, praise the Emperor. I am the edge of the blade. I am the cut that ends foes. I am the wrath that topples armies. Sisters of the martyred lady, brothers of the Black Templars, will you fight with me?
This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. Faith is an often misused and maligned virtue. Myriad deities of conflicting providence and elements of human prosperity attributed this label by charlatans and naive zealots. A blade unsheathed, should it not be tempered by skepticism, faith's edge causes damage aplenty without a means to constrain its ability to veer into the territory of credulity. For while some answers of life, the universe and human existence remain unknown, be wary not to believe everything you hear, for it is those most zealous in their unabashed or even brazen naivety who often commit the greatest acts of suffering.